My name is Rick Rabin, and I have a long history of dealing with lead poisoning, particularly child lead poisoning. I worked for the Boston Child Lead Program starting in 1983. And after I was there for a year or two, I discovered that there was some history behind child lead poisoning, that going back into the early years of the 20th century, there were articles by doctors and public health people showing that children were being lead poisoned by the paint in their homes. And more of these articles appeared, more and more conferences were being held, and more newspapers were printing about incidents of child lead poisoning mostly from paint. So what this reminded me of was asbestos, actually. I had some knowledge of occupational asbestos poisoning. And that history was that, again, the companies who produced the product knew that people were being sickened and dying, and that the public and that the workers were holding them now responsible. And I thought, well, this is analogous. This is a very similar kind of case. So I took this knowledge to some publicly minded lawyers, and I took them the facts that I had, and they in turn contacted other lawyers, and after a couple of years of going back and forth on what legal theories would apply and so forth, they filed a case called Santiago, child lead poisoned, and they pointed the finger at National Lead Company, which is now called NL Industries, Sherwin-Williams, and a number of other companies that produced actually the lead pigment. And there have been numerous, I'm told somewhere around 50 cases that were brought against these companies. Unfortunately, the legal theories in almost all of these states do not allow for the kind of case that needs to be brought. In any one house, which could be 50, 60, 100, 150 years old, many coats of lead paint were applied. And so it's virtually impossible to know what company's paint is on the surface. And so you really can't point the finger at any one company for any one house, any one child. And without that kind of knowledge, most states do not accept a theory that would allow targeting the industry. States need to change their laws and say market share and other similar legal theories are acceptable. And so then states, attorney generals, can sue these companies and hold them responsible for the misery and the deaths. Some of the same lead companies that made the lead paint, and they knew for decades that it was causing child lead poisoning, also produced lead pipes that carried drinking water into people's homes. Believe it or not, up until the federal law in 1986 prohibited lead pipes, they were still promoting through various voluntary codes that cities and states used. They were still promoting lead pipes. The profit motive just overwhelmed any morality in both the paint and the pipes. And again, they need to be held responsible. The pipes, I happen to know, were produced at least by again, National Lead and by Eagle Pitcher, which, by the way, Eagle Pitcher was sued and went into bankruptcy for selling the asbestos. And the bankruptcy settlement allowed them to completely get away from any liability of the lead that they sold. But the public needs to know who these culprits are and were that are still in operation.